everybody. This is Dee Marley at the History Bards podcast, and we are thrilled today to welcome Scott Fad, the author of King of Nod, who was the award-winning Book of the Year for the Historical Fiction Company this year, and we are so thrilled to have you. Glad you could be here today.
Thrilled to be here. Thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we really want to get to know you, Scott, so we would love for you to tell us a little bit about your writing journey.
Wow, it's a different kind of journey. I've met a lot of writers in the last couple of months since the book came out, and this was a 30-year journey for this book.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
I had written a book in college, wasn't very good, and then I went to work and working as a bouncer. Then I got a real job, but always had this other book that I wanted to write, and I found for me that writing the book, I couldn't do it part-time. I had many false starts trying to do it in my spare time. And so I was, doing very well in the corporate world and decided, you know what, I'm just going to go write this book because I kind of have to. So I quit everything, sold my house, moved away, had a little cottage in Florida that I wrote from. And I spent a year and a half doing nothing but writing the book.
Wow.
Well, 6 days a week, I guess I was writing. I took Sundays off. After a year and a half, cranked out a 2,000-page manuscript and was exhausted, and my funds were depleted and all that. And so I got, my old boss called me, invited me back to a nice position. And so I went back to work, and then in my spare time, I started to hone the thing down. That was a several-year process, because it was such a massive amount of work to start from.
Yeah.
And then, eventually got it into shape, and then tried to get the publishing world to look at. It's very interesting. I tell people this, that I got the Historical Fiction Company Book of the Year award, and I said, but when I started the book, it was a contemporary fiction book.
Really?
That's how long it took to get
that's right,
to get the journey that it came through. So yeah, so it was a very long process, and then eventually, this is actually a second publication. The first time it came out in 2008. It did very well, and almost immediately the publisher went bankrupt. And so it sat on the shelf. And so it was almost over 10 years after that, I was approached by another publisher who was very interested. They'd heard about the book through my publicist. They loved it. They came to me and said, we'd like to take it back out to the market if you're willing. And so that's where we are today. But yeah, it was like 30 years ago when I actually started the book.
Yeah, well, that's pretty amazing. Well, it was well worth it. The journey was well worth it. So for everybody out there who hasn't had a chance to get to know about the book, can you tell our audience a little bit about the premise behind it? It's so intriguing.
Oh, thank you. It's hard to, 700 plus pages long, so it's hard to say what it is in just a few words, but it's a lot of things. Actually, it's a coming of age tale. It's a love story. It's a mystery, a bit of a ghost story. A lot of racial conflict, social issues are addressed, and all kind of in the framework of a Southern Gothic novel. I didn't realize that's what I wrote until the publisher told me, "Oh, you wrote a Southern Gothic."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, okay. I guess that's what it is."
Definitely.
It kind of, if you read, it kind of checks all the boxes. But yeah, so at the end, it takes place off of Barrier Island, off of South Carolina. Multiple timelines. It kind of weaves back and forth between different timelines, telling the story of young Boo Taylor and his journey through life, his discovery, his coming of age, and his sort of discovery of his place in the world and the things that happen around him.
Yeah, it's and for everybody out there listening, it's, if you love Southern Gothic, if you love stories like Toni Morrison's Beloved, or Stephen King's book, what was it? Was a different name. The Body, that's it. Yeah. So if you like those kind of stories, definitely pick this one up, because it's a very intriguing tale. So I have to ask you a little bit about the research that you did,
Right. Yeah.
behind it, because I'm sure that it was tremendous. For my own book, Child of Love and Water, I was able to interview the Queen of the Gullah Nation.
Oh,
And yeah, so, that
oh,
was
you're
really
very familiar
intriguing. Oh,
with the.
very, very
Oh, okay.
familiar. So I got to travel to St. Helena's Island and
Okay.
Beaufort, and got to spend some time there. So
Yeah.
all of that history behind there, really resonated with me. So I would love for you to tell the audience a little bit more about that.
Well, I'm originally from Newark, Delaware, which is a very
Okay.
nice place. But when I thought I needed a great setting for the novel, and I hadn't really thought about the Low Country, South Carolina, and then but I had spent a little bit of time there, and I thought, well, that'd be a great place. And it turned out to be really, really important to set the book there because that really
Yes.
the island itself, where the book takes place, almost becomes its own character
Yes,
in the book. It really
it
defines,
does.
if you look at the era that where the story occurs, the rich, rich culture there, the flora and fauna and all those things. And so I knew a little bit. I had done in college, I had actually done as an English major, and I had a course that was sort of like linguistics or whatever. But my term paper was comparing the dialects of the people who had settled in the Caribbean, the people who settled in the Barrier Islands,
Hmm.
sort of comparing and contrast. And then learning that, I learned more about the culture between, the
Right.
shared elements of the cultures, how they were different, how they were alike. It's fascinating. So I kind of had an interest for years in the culture. And then, I decided, listen, if I'm going to set the book there, I got to really honor.
Yeah.
And so I just did a lot of reading in the library. Back then, we had libraries, and that's where we did all our research. Um, just read an awful lot. Read a lot of the fiction that came out of the area. Just read a lot about the history, the Gullah culture. And then I got this wonderful book on sort of I call the flora and fauna that became my Bible as I was writing the book. I did not write it when I was in the Low Country, but I referenced that everything, every plant, every insect, every
Yes.
fish, every mollusk.
Yes.
It was so all of that I think helped me feel like I was coming at it, with some credibility. But at the same time, I allowed myself the freedom to completely invent an island that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So there's elements of other multiple islands. In fact, every now and then people will come up to me and say, "Hey, this I know you based this on X Island," and I said, "No, it was everybody's sort of convinced they know what island it is." But when I get
But that's good.
true Southerners and true folks from the Low Country said, "I can't believe you're not from here. You nailed
Yeah,
it." I'm like,
you
well, and
did.
that's really gratifying, really
Yes.
gratifying.
Absolutely. And that's the best compliment you can get. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. If you can put a reader in the place
right.
and just to immerse them, which that is absolutely what you did. This book is so
Thank you.
incredibly immersive. Um, the feeling, the sense, the smell. I mean, everything about it is just extremely immersive and goes, to your credit as a writer, and also the reason why it was chosen for Book of the Year because of those elements. Very, very, very good.
Thank
And
you.
I think one of the things that I would love to talk about is
Yeah.
um, that how you were able to pull from, like, what kind of influences did you have? Um, you know, who are some of your favorite authors, and did you
Yeah.
pull from that, and how did that help you as a writer?
It helped and hurt a little
Okay.
bit actually
Yeah.
because when I started, I had not done a ton of writing. I had done some writing. I'd actually written a book, wasn't very good before that, and so I when I was all in on this thing, I thought this really needs to be good. And so I was always reading a lot, and in the process of writing it, I was still doing a lot of reading, and so I'm reading Pat Conroy, whose stuff is, from the Low Country.
Yeah.
I'm reading Toni Morrison, who I absolutely love.
Yeah.
And then, any number of other writers. So I'd say heavily influenced by Toni Morrison,
Yes.
ultimately Cormac McCarthy.
Hmm.
Um, but even Stephen King,
Yeah.
and Peter Straub, and how they, deal with various subjects and things. And what I found was I'm trying to imitate all these different writers. And at the end, when it really, worked for me, when I said, you know what, stop,
Yeah.
write the way you want to write,
Right.
write what you write, and if you do, and if you like it, more than likely other people will. But I stopped trying to write to anticipate an audience and really started to write what I thought was going to be, a great story with the right tone and the elements in it and all those things. Part of the journey was very interesting because so Ray Bradbury was also an influence. He got a copy of the book when it first came out, and he and I became pen. He called up the house. We became
Oh,
pen pals
great.
for a while right before he passed. And the same with Harlan Ellison, if you're familiar with him. He called the house, and he said he
Oh,
has since passed. So some of my literary heroes I got
yeah.
introduced to as a result of the book when it came out, and they were also significant influences in how I kind of developed my style.
And I
So
think that's really important what you said for young authors starting out in historical fiction or in any genre actually about not about finding their own voice.
yes,
And because lots of times you have these influences, but if you start going down that path, you lose yourself and you lose the
right,
story. So I
right.
think you did very well in capturing that.
When you do that, then you're tapping into, the universe is sending you information and that's where you're getting the story from. It's not,
Yeah.
but you kind of have to lose yourself in that process. So,
Yeah. And in the process of you losing yourself in writing it, the reader loses themselves in it.
oh,
So, and
thank
that's
you.
absolutely what happened. There was, moments that, and I have to ask you, so in some of the like scenes or whatever, and I know for a lot of people who haven't read it yet, you need to go out and read it. So when I say this, you'll understand. So in some of the scenes, like particularly about the beast that's in it.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, like you never actually quite for me, um,
Yeah.
like capture what that is.
Right.
But I think that's intentional.
Very intentional.
Yeah. And so explain that. Explain why that is intentional that you did it that way.
Well, I want to get a lot into the beast because the beast in a lot of ways is metaphorical.
Yes, exactly.
It's the
Yeah.
darker side of our nature, and
Yeah.
so it manifests in kind of different ways, and
Yes.
based on sort of who's the influencer, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
And that's fine. That's
But
actually what I wanted you to
it's just funny.
clarify.
I'll tell you something else, and it is a part of the answer here that I've been working with some folks who are, we're going to make a movie out of this. Um, and and we were talking yesterday, and we kind of we were working on, getting ready to work on the screenplay and all those things. And I had done a draft of things, and he said, "Well, what happens in the end?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you think happens in the end?" And I ask people who read the book, "What do you think happens in the end?"
Uh-huh.
And I get all kinds of different answers. But um, what I really and become um, attached to a book that I've read, generally it's because it doesn't spoon feed everything
Yes.
to you. It does not say, and this happened, and then this happened, and this happened.
Yes.
It's presented in a way that allows the reader to draw conclusions,
Right.
make up their own mind, have their own interpretation. And so throughout the book, I tried to do a lot of that. There's little breadcrumbs. I kind of have in my mind, I know what the meaning is, but I want to write it in a way with a little ambiguity so the reader can say, "Oh,
Yeah.
what happened there? Oh, I think it was this."
Yeah.
And so some of my favorite conversations are with people who want to argue with me about what happened in certain passages, and they're saying, "Oh, no, it was really this," and I'm like, "Okay." You say so, and so the wonderful thing about that is it stops being my book and it becomes the reader's book.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I was trying to achieve. And so again, very gratifying when I speak with folks who have um, who've enjoyed that part of it,
Yeah.
that things aren't crystal clear all the time.
Yeah.
And it makes you think. It makes you apply your own thoughts and ideas about what happened in various sequences. So, and The Beast was one of those. So.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I wanted to bring that up, because I want the audience to understand that's the part of the immersive part of this story is, like we were talking about, losing
Yeah.
yourself
Right.
and and trying to figure things out. And that, which reminds me, like, again, I know we keep referring to Toni Morrison, but
Yeah.
it's very much like Beloved, because by the end
Yeah.
of that, you're like, well, who was she? Who was she
Right.
actually? So you absolutely captured that
Oh,
same
thank you.
kind of element in this. And as we all know, Toni Morrison is a best-selling Pulitzer. Is she Pulitzer?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
prize winner. Yeah, she's a Pulitzer prize
She's,
winner. So
yeah, the best review I ever got. Well, I've been so fortunate to get reviews, but I love Toni Morrison, who I think is the pinnacle of writing.
yeah,
And American fiction in any event. And her book Song of Solomon, which I read in college, was
yes,
a huge influence on me and my
yes.
thinking about how to approach the story. Was when a reviewer, it was Kirkus of all folks, who are sort of
Oh,
notoriously mean, said the book compares favorably to Toni Morrison's Beloved,
yeah,
and that just great praise. I don't for a second believe that, but I also hearing a critic make that comparison was really special.
yeah. And I yes, your humility is awesome, but it is definitely up there. I will say that it is definitely up there. And so I really want to kind of let's kind of change gears a little bit, because we
Sure.
were like been talking about the book. I really would like for you, because we have a lot of new authors out there that watch the
Yeah.
podcast and everything, and I really would like to know what your thoughts are about the writing industry in general and
Yeah.
how somebody can kind of get started. What's the advice that you've been given, or and what you
Yeah.
can give?
Well, it's changed a lot
Yeah.
since, I first tried to go after it. So that book I wrote back in college, and I'll tell you, that was, we're talking late 70s, early 80s. I'm an old guy. You typed it out, you had to do it in the right format, and then you just
Mhm.
sent it in a box,
Yeah.
and you waited for months before you heard anything back.
Mhm.
And so I went through that process. When I in the early 2000s, when I was trying to get, this book published, um, I had a hell of a time. There really wasn't the hybrid sort of do-it-yourself
Right.
with help
Right.
industry that's emerged, which is wonderful. There really wasn't. You had to try to get an agent, or you had to try to get a publisher. You went out and you got a very big, thick book called whatever it was, the Writers,
Yes.
whatever thing, which they
I know what
updated
you're talking
every
about.
year. That gave you every agent and what they're looking
Yes.
for, every publisher what they were looking for. There was no internet. Um, and you kind of picked out, whatever you send. You had that very strict format on your query letters and what you had
Mhm.
to submit in order to get anybody interested. I'm not going to exaggerate, 100 different outreaches to different agents and publishers, and got nothing, crickets. If I was lucky, I got a
Yeah.
little postcard that said, "Thank you for your submission, but no thanks." So nobody was like, you couldn't get through. And so eventually I said, you know what, I gotta print some copies up so I can share with, my family and friends. So because they've all been interested in what I've been doing all these years with
Yes.
this book. So I did that, and I found out, you could format the interior of a book. You could format you could design a cover, make up a fake publishing company or whatever, and you could print it. So I printed up like 250 copies of it just to share with people. I had no idea if it was any good. I really didn't. No one had read it but me. And everybody liked it, but there's your family and friends. So I sent it out for some reviews, some industry reviews, and they came back just absolutely glowing. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to see if I can't get a publicist, so I can at least get the word out, somehow spread
Right.
out, and then I can
Right.
print more books and we'll figure it out. How naive I was at the time. Well, my publicist, her name is Mary Glenn McCombs, or now Mary Glenn McMornott, from Nashville, and I just found her. I forget how I even found her, but she read it and she goes, I know a publisher who might be interested in this, and she sent it to this publisher. And about 2 months later, I get a phone call from this guy, Peter Hansberger at Footed Friar Press, also in Nashville. And he said, my editor just finished reading your book. She thinks it's one of the best books she's ever read, period. We'd love to publish it. And that's the words you long to hear.
Yeah.
And so I had that great journey working with them and their editing team and their design team and the publicist and getting the book out there and doing the book tours and all those things. And then they went out of business and it all died in the vine. So what's different now, which I do think is wonderful, is you have all kinds of options.
Right.
If you want to get your book in print. And there's all kinds of niches that you can, depending. I was at a festival in Alabama just earlier this month, I guess. There was a sort of a mystery novelist festival, and they invited me to be part of the panel and all that. And I was introduced to like this thing called the cozy mystery. I think that's what they're called, the cozy, and that stuff. None of that stuff existed,
Right.
back then. So now we have the internet. If you have a particular genre with an audience that really likes that, and you can do everything on your own. You can go out and all these different vendors out there with their menu of things that they can do for you. You can go
Right.
from just a little bit of help, for distribution and
Right.
all design, or you can do the whole thing.
Right.
And I think that's wonderful to get the books out there. I do think it's still pretty hard to really sort of crack the, to do the breakthrough. This book has not broken through yet, and I believe it will. I
Yeah,
may
I do
not be
too.
around to see it, but I believe it will.
I think
And
it will too.
but uh, it's out there, and it's people like you, frankly, and your organization that I'm so grateful for, who they
Thank you.
discover it and
Yeah.
they're so willing to share their thoughts to the followings that the followers that you have, and so that's great. But I think my advice to anybody who's out there writing is just write for the love of writing,
Yes.
and don't worry so much about the outcome.
Right.
Um, but write work that you love, that you're passionate about, that you enjoy doing. It's got to be fun. Um, and and now there are resources out there that you can reach out to that
Yeah.
where you're in control
Right.
of getting it produced and made available to the public. So
Yeah, that's very true. And that's actually what we do as well, because we have an imprint, Historian Press.
okay,
We're a hybrid publisher. And so we have like services where we become like a partner with
right,
the
right,
author so we can help them get it to publication. So, and it's very, very true that there's so many more options now, and
yeah,
the industry is changing. It's not just about putting it in a box and sending it off to a
right,
publisher anymore. There's so many different options
right.
available to an author now. So I think that's great. Um, so you were just talking just a little while ago about the possibility of this being a movie.
The movie, yeah.
So tell me
I
about it.
I feel more and more confident. So yeah, I was the
Good.
publisher, my current publisher, um, had relationship with this organization that approached me and said, we've read your book and we think um, we'd be interested in talking to you about making it a movie.
Yes.
And so we went going back and forth for a couple of months before I decided to start working with them. We now have a two-time Academy Award nominee for Best Picture producer,
Oh,
who I
that's
work with almost
wonderful.
daily now as we're building out. Okay, what you got, a 710-page novel,
Uh-huh.
and he loves the novel, which has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Um, uh, you know, let's talk about a movie or multiple movies, or there's different ways to approach it.
Yeah.
So I actually originally sat down and wrote my first screenplay. It was a 10-hour, a 10-episode series. So that's in the hopper,
Okay.
if we go there. But the preference now that this whole team is now working on this
Yeah.
is, let's do a feature film, and let's figure out what the feature film is going to be. It could be a trilogy, it could be a single film, it could be two films, it
Mhm.
could be all those things. So we're sorting through that, but we have a timeline at this point where we think,
Okay.
we'll be in a place where we'll have the funding, and everything lined up by the summer.
Oh, that's
And
so exciting.
be casting in the fall, and hopefully this time next year we'll be filming.
Well, I have to tell you, so I'm putting my vote in right now for Leonardo DiCaprio as Boo because I imagined him as I was reading it. I
Oh,
was like, seriously, he would do phenomenal in this part.
there we go.
So
Oh,
that's my vote.
and you know what? How fun is it to have those kinds of conversations?
Yes,
You're talking about, hey, we're
absolutely.
going to cast the movie about your book. So,
Yeah. That's
yeah,
so exciting.
it's thrilling. It really is,
Yeah.
and it's
So,
fun learning now. More about the film business and the art of screenwriting.
mhm.
Um, and which I got to tell you, I feel is a lot easier than cranking a novel out of thin air. You know,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
um, so you're not pushing yourself over prose there. You're thinking about how this is going to look in an image. So
Yes.
it's a bit different process, but it's fun.
Absolutely. Well, that's so exciting. So whenever the closer that you get to all of that, please let us know so that we can make
Oh,
some
sure.
announcements on the
I have
podcast and
a
also in our group.
I have a call later today, about when we, are going to start going public with discussing this. So you're kind of getting the preview. This
Oh,
is
that's
the first time
exciting.
I've talked to anybody about this that wasn't a part of the team that's working
Yeah,
on it.
because I've
So
kept it quiet because you told me to keep it quiet, and I
thank you.
have.
Thank
So
you.
that's very exciting. Thank you for allowing us to present it that you're
No,
that it's going in this direction. So we're
thank
all
you.
really excited for you. So what do you have coming up? Are you working on anything new
Well, with the
except for
movie,
this? I know
yeah,
with
the things
this,
turned
yeah.
around quite a bit. So I had originally sort of envisioned a four novel arc
Hmm.
that takes place in the same universe as King of Nod. Not necessarily direct sequels or anything, but sort of overlap with some of the characters.
Right.
And so there's a couple way this can go. We'll see how we go with the film, and I'll probably be a little busy,
Of course.
doing the screenplay and the rest of that work. Um, but it was interesting. So the producer that I talked about, he was just a lot of fun to work with. He's also got it, by the way, an Emmy as a director, and he's a screenwriting award as well. So he's just a very talented guy. And he's been in the industry for years and years and years. Um, um, he was telling me about, I was kind of pushing for going with the miniseries,
Mm.
because you get the whole book in 10
Yes, you
hours. We can
do.
get the whole book, right?
Right.
We can do that. If we do a feature film, we got to figure out, okay,
Yeah.
what are we including and not. And and he said, well, that the issue today is that, um, if you're looking for the streaming, um, companies, Netflix or whatever, they want at least 5 seasons. And
Hmm.
I thought about that for about 5 seconds. And I said, well, I can do 5 seasons.
Yeah.
And it was back to that fourth novel arc,
Right.
right? And so that's still in the realm of possibility.
Right.
So, I next for me is let's
You're,
let's get this movie going.
yeah, you're going to be busy.
And then either, I'll get to work on, and I actually am about 80 pages into the second book.
Okay.
But get to work on that, or get to work on a 5-season series. So
yeah, I mean, that sounds exciting, and you're going to be very, very busy author.
Yes,
Over
well,
that's a good thing.
It's a great thing. It's
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, we really appreciate you being on the show today, and we're excited for you. We're excited for this book, and for everybody. It's going to pop up on the screen. This is the book King of Nod by Scott Fad, was our book of the year for this year's contest for the Historical Fiction Company. Please go out and buy it. It's available on Amazon. You can go to Scott Fad's website, which is, say it for me, www. It's just scottfad.com.
Yes.
Okay.
www.scottfad.com.
Okay, and we're going to have that pop on the screen too.
Okay.
So thank you so much for being here today, and we're so very excited for you.
It is my pleasure. I really enjoyed this. Thanks so much.
You're absolutely.
Right.
Everybody, thank you for visiting. Thank you for watching the History Bards podcast today. And as always, keep making history and keep listening. Thank you.